Awesome.
Yeah, let's go.
Welcome back to Game Pass Pals. I'm Joe Vine. This is the Magical Wizard.
Hi, that's me.
And oh,
I was gonna say, and this is Seskimo, but you know, you can go for it.
it's fine. Look, we just have to be awkward.
I'm Seskimo.
Hmm.
And I'm the wizard.
Never change.
And
Today,
that's Joe Vine.
He's
the serious one.
Mm-hmm. Today we're gonna be talking about Edith Finch, or what remains of her specifically. This game is a game that was not what I expected at all. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely wasn't expecting.
Okay, let's talk about that first.
Game.
Then, what were you expecting?
I don't know, because the idea of what remains of Edith Finch, like as a nebulous like thing, I didn't ever watch it, and part of the problem was I mixed these all came out in my brain relatively the same time. Of like, there's a bunch of games that are very story heavy, focused on a bunch of different emotions and like pushing narrative forward. So I mixed this up with, like, there's another one that they hired, or they couldn't get a VA in time, so they just took a person who was from their studio to work on it. Like all of those kind of general game styles kind of all mushed together in my head, and that was a problem, because I think the one I'm thinking of is like Hellfire Suna's Sacrifice or something like that, Hellblade Suna's Sacrifice. Like there's a bunch of different games that are all like a lead female character going through a story, like whether it's like dealing with something in their life, dealing with you know, mental fatigue, like all of the different, any of the things, and they all felt like they came out in the same like year span. And I think that's the problem for me, is playing none of them and them all having very generic names crush them into one thing.
That's fair. I personally thought it was going to be a bit more non-linear and a bit more about like exploring the house than what it to me, the game was more about the vignettes more than it was like actually exploring the house. And I thought it was going to be more like exploring the house, like maybe even slightly puzzly a bit. But that's not what it was at all.
Yeah. What did you think going in, Seskimo?
I didn't have much thought. I just saw it, watched the trailer, it looked fun, and wanted to play it. I was hoping for a little more puzzles and whatnot than there was, especially since I think I played this like shortly after finishing Outer Wilds. So, and seeing it was Annapurna, but that's the big reason I jumped into it, was because I'm like, oh, cool. It's like on the Game Pass and it's by Annapurna, and so yeah.
I do think Annapurna actually acquired this like after its initial release.
Well, the problem is Annapurna doesn't really. Do they actually make games anymore?
I don't think they've ever made games.
I don't think they ever. They were definitely producers.
Yeah. Then
they're just like a publishing company.
So they're good at finding things and publishing things that are interesting for the most part, but like, I wouldn't. It's kind of the awkward thing of like, I get why, Annapurna, you're more interested, but I feel like it's not a guarantee of anything, because all they do is publish.
They publish, but they tend to publish a set of things that are relatively similar in concept and execution.
Just like any publisher, right?
Yeah.
They have a shtick. They have something they followed, and so I'm like, okay, cool. I liked one of the last games that they put out and published. This seems up my alley, because I usually watch a trailer first, but I'm like, okay, let's give it a try. See what else is kind of there.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that. Like in general, I think I would honestly give Annapurna the benefit of the doubt because of that. So I'd be more willing to try pretty much whatever they back. I will say this game, if you're looking for, I think you were looking mostly for something kind of like, what was that one, that Gone Home? That seems like what you were trying to describe, Wizard. You were expecting something more like that.
Gone Home is also incredibly linear now.
Wait, is Gone Home really that linear?
Gone Home
I didn't know that. Okay, interesting. I didn't actually know that. I haven't played that much of Gone Home. The original thing that I got from Gone Home was it's not terribly. It's much more exploration going on, but maybe I just haven't got enough into that game to realize. For me, this game is essentially an anthology, which is like weird, but like that wasn't really what I would have expected, especially starting playing it. But it's an anthology of smaller mini games. Like I think I can comfortably say that without spoiling anything, especially considering they go through it in the game
Have I
trailer.
played Vanishing of Ethan Carter?
No,
No.
but it's on my list of something that I probably should play.
So on the spectrum, I would say there's like a spectrum of like this is very anthology vignette heavy, and then Gone Home isn't. And
Ooh.
these are both like it's a walking simulator, right? Both of these are very clearly walking simulators. There's no real gameplay to them, particularly. Besides like very.
Are you talking about Edith
minor
Finch?
bits. Yes, Edith Finch.
I would say there's a bit more to some of them, especially specific mini games.
Anything,
but I get what you're
that's
talking
in
about.
there is super minor and kind of just loops back into the walking simulator thing.
True, I would
but
agree with
maybe
that.
just in a different
Yeah.
style.
I do think there is some gameplay, like actual things you're doing, and there are a couple puzzles that you're solving. But like I get what you mean. I would agree in general.
Yeah, so Vanishing of Ethan Carter, I'd put in the middle of the spectrum. It's like sort of vignette heavy, but it's not really an anthology. So if anyone's played that and you're wondering about Edith Finch, it leans even more heavily into that type of thing.
Interesting. Okay, and how would you guys feel about suggesting this game to somebody? Like, would you recommend this to most people, or are you thinking it's going to be a specific kind of crowd that would be interested in this?
So like if you don't like walking simulators, you're gonna hate this, right? Like that's just a sticking point for a lot of people.
Yeah, I do think that's fair. I think this is, to me, a little bit more on the gameplay side. Like, if you absolutely detest walking simulators, there's no universe this is going to magically change your opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, I do think that if you're not like, if you're kind of tepid on it, you're like, give or take, walking simulators are not the end of the world. Like, I think this is perfectly fine, especially if you enjoy stories. I think it's a good like step up of like, you're not.
I think it's
as on
probably
rails.
one of the best walking simulators, at least that I've played.
I think I'd agree with that. Yeah, although I haven't played very many.
Yeah.
So
I guess to preface this with I haven't played very many. I've played Gone Home, and Ethan Carter, which is a bit more on the puzzle side, but
I do feel like this is a step above like, this is definitely a step above. Like, if you're thinking of visual novels, I feel like the thing about this is, I would actually say this isn't. Do you think that walking simulators are that different from visual novels? I guess I'm gonna ask that first.
So, walking simulators are to books as graphic novels are. Sorry, walking simulators are to visual novels as graphic novels are to books.
I agree with that. And I think that would probably be my biggest takeaway is this is probably the most like, I would say this is the closest one to me. This is pushing the edge of like even being a walking simulator. So like if you're kind of like wanting to try more stuff, for me, it's weird. My brain is like hopping back to getting people into video games who don't necessarily like video games. I think this is a really good one, but I think I would still start them with something with less controls first. Like I would start with like something more like a visual novel that has like a little bit in there, and then go to something like this.
The other thing we always forget when trying to get people into video games too is this is a first-person 3D space controls. That just makes some people sick.
Yeah. But, and that's why I would start with this
starting out.
After like a visual novel or something, just to get used to like even using a mouse and keyboard to progress through things. And to be honest, if you're sick from first person, you're not really going to enjoy most video games. I'm just going to be honest right there. Like if this kind of game would make you sick, you're going to run into issues with a lot of video games. I don't think most video games would not make you sick. I think almost all of them will.
Yeah.
Because this is pretty tame as things go. But like I was saying, this is nice because it slowly introduces you to mouse and keyboard controls, being in a little first person view, and like having to look around and figure things out that way, while not like overwhelming you with like, can you even jump in this game?
I don't think so.
In some of the vignettes you can.
But I was gonna say, like, I think
Yeah.
you just like straight up can't for the most part. Like you're very much easing people
You have
into
no need to.
exactly. Well, it's a good way to make you not be able to break games. That was like a huge issue with security breach. Hilariously, you could have made security breach never have jumping, and then all of a sudden the game just wouldn't be broken. It's one of the best ways to make it so that your game is just less breakable. On extended edition, did the same thing. There was no jumping in that game because jumping breaks things. It's like one of the most like
Yeah.
easily abused mechanics of all time.
Jumping
So
is very hard to program well.
yeah,
It's like impossible to get perfect.
but I think it's definitely a good starter game, and especially if you enjoy story heavy stuff. I think it's also just nice to kind of like, I think a little part of me enjoyed having so many different like gameplay elements and all the different stories that they tried to tell, because it is um like not full on anthology, but like mini anthology kind of.
Yeah, and all of the different, and I'm just gonna keep calling them vignettes, I guess.
I feel like vignettes are the better word for them here. Um, only because, well, I guess anthology does kind of fit, but I feel like vignette feels better because you're experiencing it kind of through one whole thing, as opposed to, because you don't. Well, yeah, I don't know. I like vignettes more.
So I'm looking up specifically the word for vignette because, oh, okay, thanks universe. Of course there's two words for vignette, and I didn't know there were two completely
yes.
different definitions that had nothing to do with each other. So when I think vignette, I think of the black and white photos of people. That's what I think of when I think of vignette.
Before. Huh.
That's exactly why I was confused. Because if I'm not mistaken, that's a different definition for vignette. Actually, it says right here that it's that. So it's or vignetting, which is like the fading on the edges of like
Yeah, a photo.
a photo. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a photo, but
piece of
yeah,
art.
yeah.
Yeah, a piece of art.
That's the only thing I've ever heard the word vignette used for. I have never heard the definition
Really?
of like it being a brief description, account, or episode. Like I've never heard of that term for vignette. That's why I was confused. I was like,
That's crazy.
Oh,
huh. Well, it's like sometimes you just don't get used to it. I mean,
Yeah,
no,
that's
I knew
fair.
this, but I needed to make sure that everybody else who would possibly be listening
It's
would
very
know this.
important that everyone knows about the term vinaigrette.
That's
Anyway,
Vignette's probably more accurate. I mean, episodic is still essentially the same. You could just call it an episode, but like even then, it's vignette would probably be better because
I
it's
think it's the best,
Yeah.
term. I forgot what I was saying about each vignette was unique, and I think its gameplay elements really reinforced what it was trying, like the story it was trying to tell. Like it used the minimum amount of interaction that it has. I won't even necessarily call it gameplay, but like the amount of interaction it has really reinforce the story it was trying to tell. Also, I'm realizing we're getting to the point where we should probably enter the spoiler zone pretty soon because it's kind of hard to talk around these things at this point.
Yeah, that's
but,
more than
if-
fair.
If either of you have anything more to say.
I think we did a pretty good job talking. I feel like we got a big amount of like information already out there without talking about spoilers too. Like I think this is the most we've actually talked about a game without spoiling anything. So I
Yeah.
think it's more than fair to say we're entering the spoiler zone. Woo woo woo. If you care about spoilers, go play the game first. If you're here to just
Spoiler
hear this
town.
discussion, man, this discussion's gonna be good.
Population us.
Yeah. So
Spoilers, everyone dies.
I mean, technically not true. Spoilers, everyone was dead.
Correct.
You get to witness everyone dying.
Well, okay, that's relative, but yes. But technically speaking,
yeah.
spoilers, everyone was dead in the start. But I mean, when the name is called What Remains of Edith Finch, like, that kind of checks out.
Yeah.
Not that far in the manga yet, jeez.
Uh,
I'll fight you behind a Wendy's parking lot. Deal.
But I do think I loved the different vignettes that we had, specifically like the fact that they went out of their way to have all the different styles. I like when they threw us into that one that was like the horror movie comic booky style.
That one was very good.
The
Yeah,
fact that
was good.
that set up, because that's the third or the second one, isn't it? It's very early on.
It's pretty early. Yeah, it might be the third.
It really sets
Um,
up the rest of the well, basically the rest of the entire game.
Did
Yeah.
that one have gameplay on it at all, or was that one just like?
No, it was
uh,
literally run to a
video?
place, see what happened, run to the other place, see what happened, run back.
I thought he was doing just like a comic being read to you, but yeah.
No,
I
it
mean,
was
that's kind of what it was.
you were a panel inside the comic. It's comic panel, panel,
okay.
panel, panel. You were playing inside the panel, and then it kept going panel, panel, panel. It was I thought it was really cool, and that was kind of my thing. Like the first ones were kind of it felt more like just a story being told. Same very they didn't use any special shaders. They didn't use any special like storytelling, changing where you are or anything.
Yeah.
Like that really started to entrench that they're going pretty hardcore and making sure each of these stories is really told more in the way that it would have been seen or felt from like the perspective. Like the fact that your narrator is like your narrator's still technically you, because you are playing as Edith, right? The whole time, as far as I can tell, that's what it
No,
is.
you're playing as her daughter, right?
You're playing as
No.
someone's kid.
You're playing as
no,
Edith
you
Finch's
are
daughter
playing as
or
yeah,
child. I think it's a son. I don't know. They're not super
I
clear at
think
the end.
I think you're playing as the son of. Yeah.
the child of Edith.
You're playing as Edith's.
Yeah.
Well, technically speaking, the entire experience is your character, not the child. Edith is the person going through the house,
Okay.
and then at the end, it's the child sitting there over the grave. But I believe the full story is you specifically playing as Edith. It's
That
not
would
super
make-
clear. I think you can kind of say whatever you want, and it kind of still works. But because of that, like, it's definitely interesting. Also, there's no universe they would have ever been allowed to have a house like this. I'm just gonna throw that out there. This place would have definitely been torn down for how dangerous it was.
Yeah, no, like I mean, if you own the
Yeah.
land, can you just kind of do whatever you want with it?
No, you definitely cannot. That is still against the law.
I mean,
That attitude.
I mean, otherwise
Yeah.
there would be, like, zoning
Fine,
laws
that's
still
fair.
exist.
You got
Trust me.
permits, it's fine.
Otherwise, you'd
Fine.
probably end up with a Walmart right next door to your
Yeah.
house in the middle of nowhere. Actually, that probably wouldn't happen because Walmarts would not make any money being there. But still, zoning laws very much do still exist. You can't. You do have to permit building stuff. So obviously, that family didn't care much about doing things by the book. Well, except for the one who was in the military.
yeah.
Turns out, I mean, they all. It's not really a surprise. They all died with a house like that. So
Oof, oof. You're not wrong. But man, is the house cool?
yeah, I mean, the house didn't even kill any of them, right? Like it wasn't because of the house ever.
You're not wrong.
No, it was never because of the house.
Except for like.
Well, we don't know why
how did,
Edith died.
She died during childbirth.
Oh,
Yeah.
does it explicitly say that?
I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
It just says she was writing all of this down because she was like
90%
fairly
sure.
confident she was going to die. But I didn't know if
which,
it said that.
Okay. Can we talk about the ending? I hate the ending.
Yeah, it's fine.
I hate it a lot. Like the rest of the game, great. The ending, I hate it. Like, why would you choose to have a child, like knowing you're going to die, and like probably leave this child behind early, and also leave it like there's obviously a curse with your family. Like there's something bad going on, right? Like,
Well,
even if like you don't believe there's a curse, like something weird's going on.
I don't
And you
know.
got to be superstitious enough. Like, why would you inflict that upon your child?
I don't think I would be superstitious enough. Looking through this whole thing, I don't blame her for doing any of the things. Like, I don't honestly think it was a bad bet. Like,
I think it was a terrible idea to
Nah.
have a child. with
well,
your
I
family.
already think that's true regardless. But
Yes, also that. But
specifically for this, I wouldn't say it's especially worse. If anything, you have a very colorful and rich family history to go back on. Besides, the real answer is,
yeah, but you don't get to meet any of them because they're all dead.
well, one of them grew to be
Yeah.
like 95. Yeah, our family's cursed to be dead. You're 95.
Which
That's
one's 95.
the grandma.
No, It's Edie who died at
Oh
93
yeah, yeah. Literally,
at
the
the age of
grandma's the only
93.
one.
Okay,
Which
if that doesn't espouse
super
that there's a
sus.
curse, like, come on, man. You're gonna tell me somebody, yeah, our family's cursed to die. Yeah, that's called being human. It's the curse of flesh. Like, come on.
Nah, like I think Edith it believed in the curse, and if she does believe in the curse, then it's unethical to have a child.
I would
That's fair.
mostly agree with you, but at the same time, I don't think she actually was sold on there being a curse.
I mean, she said she's like, I think I'm going to die, right? Like,
I mean,
Edith, yeah. Hold on, yeah. To get everything straight here, so
doesn't
we
take a curse to
play
do that.
as Christopher, the son of Edith.
Okay,
Edith
got it.
died during childbirth.
Okay.
Dawn, I'll just run through it here. From reverse order. Okay, then Dawn dies of an undisclosed illness.
Do we know how
Edith-
old?
Edith's mother.
It doesn't say, but Dawn is Edith's mother. So, and yeah, and then Lewis commits suicide at the age of 21. Dawn and blah. Edie, that would make Edie our great grandmother, dies at 93.
Which
The
that alone
cause
disproves
of-
the entire theory that it's actually a curse.
of
But
which implied to be complications due to consuming alcohol alongside of prescription medicine.
Who-
yeah, that sounds about right.
Uh,
She married into the family though, right? Like, she's not.
I think so.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. In some cases, it doesn't matter. That's part of the like awkwardness of this entire story, right? Like,
Yeah. What is this family tree?
janky. The real answer is at the end of the day, like a bunch of these people lived plenty far enough, like did things that were substantially risky enough that it didn't matter. Somebody literally was in the was it army? I can't remember what branch. They were in the military and didn't die in the military. Like, the real answer is like they're not cursed, or they could probably definitely die way earlier than they would. Like it just seems
so
like
Edie married into the family, so she doesn't have the curse.
even then I find that the curse kind of
'Cause it was
sus.
Odin.
Yeah, but Odin still died when he was pretty old.
Odin died at 57.
Yeah, if you live old enough to see your grandchild, you've lived long enough.
Oof.
I'm just saying.
I mean, I guess back in those times, yes.
Well, no,
Nowadays,
the average age is so warped. People really underestimate how the average age works. There's a specific time period where you're more likely to either die when you're younger than a specific age, or if you get past that age, you're almost guaranteed to go way later. And that's why everything seems really weird and warped.
Right.
But even regardless of actual like human beings dying, I don't think I genuinely believe there's no good enough evidence for any of these curses. They had kids who loved exploring and doing much more dangerous things. They lived on top of a freaking train track, for God's sake. How can you see anything good happening from that when they play in the train tracks, you know? Like,
Hey, only one of them died on train tracks, and it
and it wasn't
not for
because he
playing
was
on it.
playing on them. It's because he was hiding from someone.
yeah. But that's kind of
he
my
was hiding
point.
from someone. He was hiding from everyone.
Yeah, but I feel like it was mainly someone.
I will say that the biggest freak accident is probably that deer kicking a person off the freaking cliff. That one shook me. I was like, oh, you're going to accidentally shoot somebody. Nope.
Surprise!
The best part is that was the last one I saw because I accidentally skipped it.
Yep, I remember that.
That's still the crazy part to me. How much of the story can you actually skip? Because
Not a ton. You skipped Odin's too, I think.
yeah, I skipped at least 2 stories. I think I skipped 2 specifically. But like, if you just try, can you grab the key for the
I don't think you can.
Okay, because you get the instructions later on how to open the basement. What's up, Cisco?
Oh, I was gonna say I don't think I skipped anyone's stories.
I didn't think I did either, and then I realized that I did at the end.
Okay, so the average age of death for them was 25.
Yeah, that's definitely pretty low. I mean, okay, what if you get rid of the baby? Because the problem is, like, the baby definitely warps all of the ages.
27.
Yeah, that didn't help much. Okay.
It only brings it down, yeah, 2.5 years.
I mean, what's the problem is I feel like they're not a family who lives in a white picket fence suburban neighborhood. Like, they live in the middle of nowhere where there's clearly known issues for Mother Nature hating you because it's already literally destroyed an entire house. One of them died by choice. I want to take that one on the record too, by the way. One of them just is literally like, yeah, I'm just going to stay in this house. It's flooding. Yeah, I'm just going to stay in the house anyways. You will literally die. Don't care. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, those people are like that.
There's definitely some stupidity in this that just like kind of makes things really warped.
Wait, who is that?
Isn't that the first one before Odin?
Oh, I don't even have her that person like listed on here because it's not in the family tree.
But that's why you see a house in the middle of the lake, right?
I thought that was for Edie, and that's not how she dies, but I might be wrong.
Somebody definitely died because they didn't want to leave the house.
Yeah, Edie died in the house in the house that we saw last because of her alcoholism and prescription drugs, and she didn't want to leave.
That also sounds correct. I'm just saying there's enough questionable things that were going on within this entire like family that blaming it on a curse and not, you know, like mental health is not being properly taken care of in the family.
One of them was just like straight up mental health issue, right? Like,
yeah, like,
yes.
And let's be real here. There's probably more addictions to things that they shouldn't be addicted to in that family than we see. Like, there's
addiction runs in the family.
I mean, it does.
Another reason not to have kids.
Literally, yes. But that's one of those things where it's like I think you're going to see things where you're not. And to be fair, it is a games, and that's kind of like the vague universe that they want you to kind of acknowledge, but not necessarily be sold on. I think it's a question of, is this curse even real? And I bet there's a lot more people than me who are skeptical and would be more than welcome to just say, no, it's not a real curse. If anything, like, it's just bad happenstance puts you in a bad spot mentally. You're more likely to play into a curse if you believe in it, you know? Like, the odds of you not...
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. Yes. Not causing more issues.
All right. We'll get off of this curse talk because we spent like 20 minutes on it. What was everyone's favorite vignette?
That's hard. There's so many good ones. I think I'm leaning towards the fish one.
Yeah, I think that's the one that particularly stands out. I think most people think that's the one that's the really standout one.
Well, I think the baby one's really solid too. Like, insanely good. Depressing as hell, but insanely good.
Yeah, it's fine. It's up there. I think the fish one's just by far the best one, like far and away.
Yeah.
I think I generally agree with you. I do still have like I liked the setup for like the rest of it getting more and more extreme in general for like the storytelling stuff with
I don't know,
the
man.
comic book
first one was quite something.
True. Part of it's that weird is like some of them are really, really short and abrupt though. And that definitely makes it harder to like appreciate them necessarily as much. Like the rocket spaceman one, right?
Yeah, the one with the wind was pretty meh. I would say that's probably my least favorite one.
Yeah. Oh, other point. Who puts a swing set next to a cliff? You're just begging to kill your kids. Just throwing that out.
I mean,
there.
That's reasonable.
That is reasonable.
I'll give you that one.
But yeah, I think in general it would probably go that fishing one. I liked the comic one's always gonna have a spot in my heart because it felt like it helped set up like, oh wow, this is really going to go to places I wasn't expecting. Like, it wasn't just going to be
and not the one where you turned into a cat.
Nah.
When he turned into the cat, that was interesting. That's like the first one, right?
That's the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
You turn into a cat and then like a eagle, and you just like murder some animals, and you turn into like a shark, and then you turn into a shark rolling down a hill.
Yeah, I think that one actually. The funny thing is like that one was really good. Like it is actually really solid, but it was
It's
like
very memorable.
yeah. I think the problem for me is that was one of the ones that genuinely felt like because you were literally reading from her diary, right?
Yes, you were reading from her diary.
That one
Yeah.
felt substantially less like you were understanding the story of how she died and more like it was just a child that was crazy. Like it wasn't setting up like to me that was setting up less of
That
like
one
what
was
the curse
very
was.
unclear, yeah, of what was going on there.
And
That one was definitely the weirdest one, I think.
well, and
Yeah.
I think that's part of why like it was very awkward at first to be like, wait, what am I trying to be what am I doing here? Like
Yeah, what am I doing here? Why is this here? It was weird, but it was very memorable.
yeah, it was honestly probably not a bad start. The problem was like I said, it doesn't really set up any of the rest of the characters. It's just like, oh,
Yeah.
here's this crazy story told by a child because you're reading through her diary. Yeah, I mean that happens. Children be crazy.
Mhm.
Next question. Like, but
Children
Well,
be
whatever that
crazy.
experience was, like killed her or something. Like it's very unclear what happened to that girl. But anyways,
especially because she
we
ends
don't
back
have
in
to
the
go on.
bed.
Yeah, did she just like die of starvation or something? Who knows? Okay,
Yeah.
anyways, but yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm just looking at the ones. I liked Walters, who was the guy who lived in the basement and died to the train. Um,
That one
Yeah.
was really
His-
good for being so short.
it was really good for being so short, and like the mechanics of that vignette reinforced what his story was,
100%.
which is just like yeah the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. They did a really good job balancing the length of all the different vignettes too.
Yeah.
Like I was kind of impressed. Like the way it was, it's not easy to make a bunch of mini stories, mini games that are like still interesting stories, still have something cool that ties them in as the game function, but also like don't overstay their welcome. And
Yeah,
I think
don't think any of them really overstayed their welcome. Maybe one
I would
or
agree.
two, but like
maybe hilariously the one that I like a lot. I could argue that the comic one definitely might have a bit.
yeah, that's fair. It is a bit long for what it is.
Especially considering it's comics walk upstairs, comics walk downstairs, comics walk upstairs again.
I do actually think that the first one with the animals is maybe a little bit too long as well for what it is.
That one I think was one of the ones that I was like, this is interesting, but like the jumping it
controls are
has you
bit
do
janky,
isn't
too.
real
The
jumping. Like
jumping's really janky.
Yeah.
like that was kind of my thing is like it's definitely towards the awkward side on some of the way the mechanics worked, but I think it's because like I feel like that was one of the first ideas that they had and that they really wanted to do something that crazy like from that standpoint. Like hilariously I feel like the exact same concept was the baby and the babies was just way better. But
yeah, that one was short and to the point and got its point across very quickly.
yes. Yes.
Yep.
I do think they also did a really good job pulling at heartstrings on specific parts and not feeling like excessively depressing through the whole thing. Like
yeah, it wasn't really melodramatic, right?
yeah, it was pretty succinct and to the point, and I think that was the thing that was kind of like this is a sad game. Like it objectively just is. Everybody's dead.
Oh yes.
It doesn't really necessarily feel like sad and depressing though.
Yeah, that's not easy to do. Like I have to give them kudos for that.
Agreed.
It's just not something I would have expected out of a game that's literally about here's what we think might be a family curse and we're pretty sure people are dead.
Pretty sure people are dead.
To be fair, there's still that one kid who might not be.
Oh yeah, the one
Maybe.
that just like
Milton?
disappeared. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Milton's dead.
No, he's definitely dead. But
Yeah, rip that kid.
what was his vignette? Did he have one?
That's a
Or
cool art.
wasn't it like
range.
super
Yeah,
short?
It was the art one.
I liked that one too.
I feel like I remember it, and there was specific like
It
crayon
was
drawings,
short.
but it was super short, and it was a little weird because at the
It was
end,
the flip book. It was the flip book.
that's what it was.
Hmm.
Gotcha. And that's one of the things where it's like, I do think part of the problem with having everything be short vignettes does kind of like make me want some more, which is part of what's cool about this is like there's nothing stopping them from if they ever decided, hey, what if I had a game that was more told in this story? What if we had um like I think I'm growing to like anthologies and vignettes in general just because I love the micro things that I can see and check out. The problem is it feels like it's got to be a giant pain to produce because you're essentially producing like 7 games.
Yeah, the art is probably the biggest issue, right? Like,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
the actual programming probably isn't too bad between each of these because it's still like the same general like physics
Yeah,
control
exactly.
scheme and everything. But yeah, the amount of art assets it would be a huge pain.
And that's one of the things that I think is kind of cool about this, like to be able to kind of bounce around those. I think the other thing was with like game design stuff is always kind of fun to be able to see a little bit of this, a sprinkle of that thrown together, and you're just like, oh, actually, I never thought about it that way. I never thought about doing that, and that's one of the few things that I think. Usually it ends up not turning out as great. Like I've seen plenty of times where I've seen the games and it just didn't feel great. Like it felt like they were just trying to throw a bunch of stuff together and just see maybe something will stick. I don't think there was a terrible one.
Yeah.
And
I just
go ahead.
I just looked into it. Since we're talking about Milton, so supposedly there is a game by the same devs,
The Unfinished
called
Swan?
the Unfinished Swan, and he is supposed to be. They're supposed to be linked.
Oh, interesting.
Huh.
I haven't played that
He
one.
is.
And
He
we're
is the unfinished. It yeah. It's stated. It's going to read the top part in case we decide to play it, but it says within the Unfinished Swan, the king is stated to have been young, arrogant, and amazingly talented. Who does that sound like? Milton.
uh
And I
That's
If
a
it's
theory.
there's
explicit, that seems like a bit of a stretch, but
well, there's more that links it, but I'm not
it's
gonna
more
do too
spoiler heavy,
spoilery.
especially if I want to play the game. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
Unfinished Swan came after, didn't it? Or was Edith Finch?
No,
first?
Unfinished Swan came first because it's in the trailer. They said
That's
from
what I
the
thought.
makers of
Okay.
Unfinished Swan.
Okay.
Yeah, but
That's what I thought.
there's also they also left like clues in the room that links the two together. So
Interesting. Oh wow, this game looks gorgeous.
So they haven't even made another game after that, huh?
They really haven't made anything other than Edith Finch. And isn't Edith Finch quite a bit old now?
Yeah, it's quite a bit old. So Unfinished One was 2012, which is actually later than I thought. And then Edith Finch. Edith Finch is 2017.
2017.
Wow.
So 5 years now.
Well, that means they're just in time for another one.
Well, they're gonna be late
There we
in
go.
like a month.
That's interesting. They haven't announced anything, have they?
I will check while we continue talking. A new game is in development focusing on the enchanting beauty of animal locomotion.
Oh, it's Heron.
Okay.
Interactions between humans and urban wildlife, drawing inspirations from places like Ico, Windowsill.
Oh, do they have like the actual name of it?
Yeah, it's Heron. If you go to their website, you can click. It's weird. It's listed under their website /games/Heron, but if you go to their games thing, it's just not there. You have
Yep,
to go to their
okay.
jobs page, and then they say next game, and if you click that, it shows this one here.
Oh, okay, weird. Yep, no, I'm there. Okay, neat.
What a like reference list. Ico, Windowsill, which I don't know that one. Spirited Away and David Attenborough documentaries.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's interesting. I'm very curious about this now. I think at some point I'm going to. I want to check out Unfinished Swan, but I'm not sure that's going to be anytime soon.
I mean, if it's a
It-
yeah,
I've played about half of it, or like most of it, I think. It's cool. It's neat. It's not like amazing, but it's cool. Worth playing if you own it already.
And that's kind of the thing of I don't think I own it. Wow. Okay, I looked up the other game they were talking about. That's a something they were curious about. Windowsill. This game looks
Mhm.
very very different from everything else they've shown. Um, it looks like one of those Flash games that you used to have to like click things in order to make things happen. I don't know if you played those as a kid or not.
I played a lot of Flash games as a kid.
But do you remember the one where like you kind of had like a cube world that you had to like click like a seed first and then plant it in the ground and then the next turn you had to water it and it was just like a specific order to do all of it to make the
Yeah.
things like win and get the most points? I get that vibe from this game. But like this feels very very different from their previous games. Which is why like I'm very curious whether like what all they mean by they say taking
I don't know.
inspiration, not that it's going to be like this, but
I mean, they kind of have that kind of weird vibe. Like both their games are kind of weird and like not quite
True.
grounded in reality, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that is entirely fair. Also, Windowsill is only $3. I was expecting.
It to be
Yeah.
less. More?
No, I was expecting it to be more than that. Most games, I tend to find that most games are not under $5 anymore.
That's fair.
I thought
And-
most games are under $10 anymore.
That's also true. I would say usually also there's a huge risk. Like I feel like if you're buying anything cheaper than like $10, it tends to be high risk that it's just shovelware. That's just
Although,
trying.
There's a example that disproves you, which you were literally playing. before
Vampire,
the
yeah,
stream
yep.
Happened.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
a $3 game.
I
Yeah.
bought the DLC. Thank you. So it's $5.
Oh, is it a paid DLC? Cool.
Yeah, it's a paid DLC. Well, they said they're gonna keep supporting the game. We're talking about Vampire Survivors. But
Yeah.
that
It's a great game.
it is. That's an interesting point because it's so dramatically different than what everything else has been happening. Like that's part of why it like exploded. The fact that it's a $5 game. It went up in price when it full
It went
release.
up in
That's what it
price,
was.
Yeah,
So it's a $5 game and it's also got a $2 DLC now. But like,
but it's on the Game Pass.
which feels so
On
stupid to me.
Gamepass.
Like
Hey, I'll
yeah.
take it.
they'll definitely take it. Game Pass has like been a godsend for video game devs. From everything I've read, the idea that you can make the game and then instantly get all upfront payback for all of your dev work, like you've essentially paid all of the money that went into the game already back in the pockets of like the company to be able to go and use it towards another game, like to be able to like hire people, right? And keep them working
Yeah.
and keep the company afloat rather than like, cool, now we got to just
Having to wait.
hope even more importantly, even the risk of like that one single person who happens to be a really, really big voice tends to lower our whole Metacritic. And now a bunch of people just super avoid it. It's definitely interesting, especially because I think it allows, not necessarily fully independent, but although with a game like Vampire Survivors, which I don't think anybody has ever heard of whoever made that before it exploded, like getting on Game Pass.
Vampire Survivors is literally just a dude who would work on it in his free time as something to like practice programming. He literally made none of the art. He'd use an asset pack.
That's
just, like,
incredible.
I'm not even sure if he bought it. It might have just been free.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But
Yeah.
it's things like that though. Like I would argue we're in a really interesting time for video games. And I think Edith Finch is a good example of like there are a lot of games that are more comfortable just trying crazy stuff. And I think the Game Pass helps that, but I also think just in general, websites like itch.io and everything is helping that a ton. And
We've come a long
happy
way
to see
since
this.
Braid.
yeah, we really have.
Yeah.
Braid isn't even that long ago. For the reference there is Braid was like the first like proper indie game.
I mean,
I would say
Toho would like to have a word with you, but I get what you mean.
Braid is like what it popularized. Like, oh, indie games are a viable thing, and that's
Yeah.
what really started like people actually trying to develop them and how big it got. That was 2008, like late 2008. It's not even that long ago, honestly.
I do think it also speaks to a degree, a renaissance of. Wait, when did Unity come out? Was that part of the thing that happened that made it also help a lot? Having access to,
Braid made in Unity.
I don't think so, but having access to, like, full up engines was a big deal.
Yeah,
'Cause
the
engines
tools
were
got a
always the
lot
biggest cost.
better. Game Maker came out around that time too, which was
Yeah. And Game
and
Maker
like
did have a lot
Flash
more
was starting to
flexibility.
become big.
Mm-hmm. Well, like, so I never really counted Flash games as indie game development, even though it very
I agree.
objectively is.
Yeah.
It was kind of a separate entity from proper game dev at the time.
Yes.
I completely agree.
I mean, well, up until like even within the last, I think, 7 years, they haven't really been able to like make money off of it. It existed, and don't get me wrong, like it's still, you know, you're still making a game, but if you can't make any money off of it, does it really matter? Like there's
Unity was first released in June 2005. I mean, you don't have to make money off of a game
the problem.
for it to be game dev, like a lot of itch games.
No, I
are
totally
free.
agree. I guess the bigger point and the bigger problem I was saying is, if we love games and we love seeing more stories be told and people being able to make whatever their hearts desire, if we have no way of supporting them, which early on Flash games were exclusively passion projects, but like literally you couldn't ever support them, then like
Yeah, Patreon didn't exist.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's essentially like only people who are either rich enough to have a hobby to do this or like so passionate they're willing to like absolutely burn themselves out and then end up in a
Flash
bad
was
spot anyways.
expensive at the time.
Yeah, if you bought it.
Mhm.
Let's be real here. Most people who made Flash animations and Flash games for the internet to consume did not buy that.
Fair. That's fair.
That's fair.
But like that's kind of the problem, right? Like if that's that your barrier of entry is you either have to know and be okay with pirating software or be rich enough and have enough spare time to do that. Like that it's nice
You
that
also
we're
have to like learn Flash, which is like its own
Awful.
complete separate entity.
Yeah.
And awful.
Yeah.
it's really good that we are in the space we are. The fact that we now have more options than ever before for independent like game makers to do things and in a lot of ways just actually make any sort of income so that like they can invest more time and effort and hopefully have a better work-life balance rather than work, you know, a ton of hours in the work week and then also come home to work on your projects and just have like no socialization balance and like all these things that cause huge burnout issues and like never being able to make a game again because you're so exhausted. Like I'm very happy that it feels like we're way better for those spots than we ever were before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that was quite a tangent we went on. Do we have anything else to say about the actual game?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it is like a good example of all of those things though. Of like I don't think a smaller, especially on Annapurna existing helps a lot too, right? It's a good example of Annapurna goes and finds these games that like are kind of crazy and weird and couldn't necessarily get full publisher backing.
Again, Annapurna was not involved in the making of Edith Finch whatsoever. Edith Finch was released, and then
Wait,
afterwards,
really?
Annapurna picked it up.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
I
said that earlier.
To be fair, the publishing though does matter. Getting advertisements, getting that information out there. As much as people don't love
Yes,
publishers,
absolutely.
like they can be a very big deal. The problem is there's a lot of scummy ones, but I think Annapurna, if anything, has proven that they're the opposite of that.
No, I've not
Yeah.
heard great things about Annapurna.
Oh, that sucks. They
yeah.
seem to be at least a little bit better about actually getting, or like you've heard not great things about they are to work with, or not great things about like how much they like take away from the creators, or like
How they are to work with.
okay, because like
How they treat people.
Okay.
So,
that's fair. That is a thing that is, you know, something that's important to also like say, hey, you know, do keep in mind that, and that does feel like that happens with almost every publisher. I'm not gonna lie to you, but at least they actually seem to have like their Annapurna showcase existing at all is huge. How many different companies
yeah,
don't do that?
The reach they provide to their published games is very massive.
Yeah.
For those games.
And I think they do a pretty darn good job of picking games that I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty confident we all enjoy. Like pretty much like at its face value, I would say, oh hey, they're publishing something that I'm curious about. I'm going to want to go and give it a look now because like they tend to put
Yeah,
their money in pretty good
Yeah.
spots.
I have played a lot of Annapurna games, and I don't think there's one I've even been mid on. So
That's not true.
I
I know
one?
specifically one, the 12-hour one.
Oh, I didn't actually play that.
Oh, okay. Well, that was the one you said looked the most meh. I think the only one of us who's played that is Seskima, though.
Yeah.
The one that's in that one room. You played it on
there's more
stream.
than one room.
Oh, it's more than one room? You know what I'm talking about, though.
It's a small apartment. Yes, I did play it, and it was, I would say, that one's hard. That one's a little harder to justify, especially if you look at it from like, how big true crime and whatnot is, because you gotta play through a lot of interesting true crime like fantasy type stuff, when like or like what you'd want to do as a true crime person, like trying to explore different angles. So I would say, but out of all of them, you could probably put that one as mid as their like most mediocre game that I've played.
Okay. Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy playing it, yes.
Okay.
I
don't think it's on Game Pass anymore, though, so.
Yeah, and I would recommend Edith Finch. I mean, and obviously Wilds before.
Yeah.
But before that, right?
Yeah.
What else? What else of theirs have I played?
I can tell you
stuff.
one that I don't know that you would like. Although at this point we're kind of getting past Edith Finch and just Annapurna and kind of the general, like, it is relevant. I do think this is actually a good spot to call the Game Pass pals in general. I think we've gone over. Oh, you had something?
Real quick, Edith Finch is actually their earliest game that they picked up.
Okay, that's crazy.
It is the first on the
I guess
list.
it is really old.
I mean, it's 2017. It's 5 years old, but yeah.
I mean, when you really think about video game like years, that's pretty old.
Maybe they did actually publish Edith Finch like at the time, and yeah,
I think what you're thinking of is this company's second game, The Unfinished Swan. I think maybe they republished.
It's their first game.
Yeah.
Well, what he's saying is
they republished it in 2020.
With Annapurna helping them.
With Annapurna, but I think Edith Finch, Flower, and Gorogoa, it looked to be their first 3 games that they actually published.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Of which, Gorogoa is also fantastic, and it's on Game Pass, and you all should play it.
It's leaving January 1st. Same with Outer Wilds.
You should play Gorogoa. It's very short and very good.
Yep. Oh no, the Pedestrian is too. I actually do want to play that with you guys. That's actually a discussion I should have.
I mean, I will say I have seen Outer Wilds left for a while and then came back. So I have seen games come back onto the Game Pass.
Yeah, which is always a good thing because usually that means they were played enough and they're getting paid more money again. So especially for Outer Wilds, that feels really, really good. The other nice thing is, technically speaking, that means they might also ask for the rights not only for the game but also the DLC, and I think that that's a huge deal. I would be very, very happy if Outer Wilds not only came back but also came back with access to the DLC, because I think that means more people will get to play both, and I think it's great to play both. All right, so I don't think we officially have any plans for our next one, but it's going to be. Are we still good for the last month or the last Sunday of January? I don't think there's anything crazy that should be in the way of that.
I think that's fine. Yeah, I think this was the off one because it's the holiday season.
Yep, this is the weirdest one.
Yeah, January 29th should work fine for me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then as of right now, we don't have anything officially planned, but just, keep an eye out and keep an ear. What's up?
Previously, Jordan and the Wizard rated 3 stars. I give it 4. What is your official rating?
For this game? For Edith Finch?
Yeah.
I think I'd go with 4. I think the other thing that's key for me is I genuinely think people should play this game as like an introduction to games. Like, I think this is a really, really good option of like getting to understand how different games play, and they kind of hold your hand through trying things and like subtly push you towards things and still make it explicit if you need explicit instructions.
Yeah.
The only one
You don't really get stuck here ever.
exactly. The only part that kind of bothered me is like some of the jumping frog stuff from being the baby hilariously in the bathtub was like a little
The
jank.
cat jumping too was a bit janky too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like they tend to hold your hand pretty well through these, and I think it helps introduce a lot of different game styles and game mechanics that could be interesting enough for you to say, wow, I actually really liked this specific story. I think no matter what, everybody's probably going to lean towards liking the fish one the most just because it's one of the coolest ones. But I think it's a good kicking off point, and I think it's actually really nice to have a game like that. I wouldn't ever start people on this as like their first game ever. I think honestly I'm leaning more towards like a puzzle game that's just digital, or like literally something they've already done but digital. And because of that, I think it's hard for me to ever say it's anything lower than a 4 because I think it provides that value, and I just think it's a good game. I like stories.
Agreed.
Alrighty, I think that'll be all for today then.
We did
Cool.
it. We actually took an hour with that. We thought that one would be short. So
We did it.
We took a little bit shorter than an hour because the start, like the first 2 minutes, was something else. But like general
That's
talking,
okay.
see if we could find where that picture was taken from. But I'm not really worried about it. I think that's awesome. Yeah,
No.
we did have like 20 minutes about talking about the curse, which I think is an interesting talking point, regardless.
I mean, yeah, I think
it was
that's
like the main
a great
thing of the
thought,
game,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the curse is the thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then 20 minutes about talking about the general, like the general design and the way they went with the vignettes, which I think that's actually pretty much the exact perfect way to divide it up, like the general story design and the general vignette design for the gameplay. And then we had 20 minutes of talking about game publishing and indie games and stuff, which I think this is actually probably one of the
Which I
best
think
ones
is
to pull
cool.
too.
I mean, yeah, I think that's good. I like these conversations.
I mean, it's